What's up, guys? Today we're going to build and paint the Skyshield landing pad. Now there isn't much to assemble in the beginning stages, so basically all that I have done so far is remove everything from the sprue. I assembled this main piece. Goes together really simply. There's only 4 pieces to it and they slide into place. Put a little glue on it, that's good to go. As far as the base legs go, there are 2 pieces that attach together, and as you can see here, they line up pretty well now, but I'm going to throw up a picture of how they looked beforehand, so I'll do that now. Now, as you can see, they do not line up at all. All 4 of the pieces, or 8 total, putting them together, it didn't matter how I put them together, they were all off by as much as 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So after some finagling and using the rubber bands to tie them up, they wound up working pretty well. Good enough for this tutorial. As far as painting the rest of the pieces go, what I've done here is taken some double-sided tape, stuck it down on an old piece of foam, put these on it for ease of spraying. So, you know, when I prime and paint, since this is the only side that's going to be painted, you don't have to paint the back side. That's going to be good enough for that. And for painting the final pieces, priming and painting, all I'm doing is using some chopsticks, and then I have some poster tack on the back. That way these can easily pop off and on. It sticks really well. So I'll paint one side. Once that dries, flip it over, paint the other side. That minimizes the amount of touching that I have to do, and helps to paint a little easier that way. One more thing I wanted to mention real quick. Even though these aren't resin, they're plastic kits, so you don't really have to worry about residue being left on each of the plastic pieces. I did go ahead and wash these ahead of time, just some regular dish soap and an old toothbrush, scrubbed it off to make sure there were or there wasn't any dust or anything left on them. No fingerprints, oily fingerprints. It's the easiest way to ruin a good finish, so that's a good idea to go ahead and wash them off, even though they're not resin. Make sure your hands are clean, keep some hand sanitizer or something that will dry off the oils in your fingers if you're not going to be using gloves. In my case, I'm not going to use gloves. I'm just going to make sure my hands are clean and not oily or gooey or have Cheetos stuck on them or whatever. So now that that's taken care of, we're ready to start priming. And what I'm going to use for that is the Vallejo Surface Primer. This is really good stuff. Quite a few painters out there recommended it as opposed to what I was using before. It is not cheap. I think this was like $11 for this model. So we're going to see how it works. This will be my first time using the Vallejo, and I'll be back when I'm set up and ready to go. For the initial priming step, I'm going to be using a Badger 155 Anthem airbrush. This is by no means top of the line, and it is probably as close to bottom of the line as you get as far as entry-level brushes go. I really love it. I mean, it's fantastic. Even though it's bottom feed, siphon feed instead of having the paint cup on the top, it's really good for priming, base coating, things of that nature. I highly recommend it if you're not going to be doing any intricate detail work. This thing works perfect. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my surface primer, and I'm going to mix it in a different cup. Just going to get a little bit in here. Then I'm going to take some thinning medium, because it is probably safe to prime straight from the bottle, but to make it last a little longer and a little bit thinner, I'm going to put some thinner medium in there also. And now I have forgotten what I did with my stirring brush. Excuse me just a moment. Okay, stirring brush is located. So So we're going to stir that up just a little bit. You could do that in the mixing cup or in the paint cup, but I find that mixing the paint outside and pouring it into the cup is a little bit more beneficial as far as making sure you're not spraying paint, straight paint or straight thinner through the airbrush in the beginning. So just pour this into the cup. I have my compressor set to 15 psi and ready to go. So we're going to go in short bursts. It doesn't really matter where you start as long as it's all covered. As you can see there, still a little bit thick the way that it's spraying out. Probably could bump the PSI up a little bit to take care of that. But again, it's not really that big of an issue since this is just a priming phase, stage, however you want to look at it. You want to get an even coat. It doesn't have to be a thick coat, but just make sure that everything is hit so when we put the paint on it will adhere properly. Because this is pretty elementary, I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera and I'll come back once everything's primed. So I'll be right back. So my next step is pre-shading. For that I'm going to be using Model Color Black from Vallejo, and I'll also be using this thinner medium again. I'll be using them at about 2-to-1 ratio, 2 parts thinner to 1 part black. And that gives me about the consistency that I want, not too thick, not too thin, able to be sprayed at lower PSI setting on the compressor. For this is probably going to be around 10 to 12 PSI, and we'll adjust that on the fly as we go. And what we're going to be doing is hitting all of the areas that some kind of depth of shading would be needed. And what I'll do is probably do this piece. Thank you, compressor. Sorry about that. So what I'll do is maybe one of each of the pieces and show you where I'm going in and doing that pre-shading, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now I'm ready to start pre-shading. I already have my black paint mixed up. So what I'm going to do is just start hitting the inner areas. Now you do not have to be neat with this at all. Don't worry about trying to get perfectly straight lines or being too anal about how the black goes in. So all this is meant to do is to give a little shading to our base coat. So you want to just make sure that you hit all of the corners, all of the areas that are recessed compared to the panels, all of the panel lines themselves, and that's pretty much all you have to do. So I'm going to hit this real quick. I won't be doing a lot of talking because it's hard for me to do 2 things at once and be halfway accurate. So it'll look a little bit like graffiti, but that's just the way it has to be. And you know what? It helps if your compressor is turned on. How about that? Professionalism, folks. Professionalism at its best. Okay. Wow. Airbrushes work so much better when they have air. You can see. Can see but can't hear. Thank you, compressor. Okay, I can talk again. You can see that I am not being neat at all. I'm not trying to be neat. Doesn't matter how good or how bad your airbrush control is. There's no point in trying to get all of your lines perfectly straight, perfectly neat. We'll fix that. Fix all of those whenever we get to the base coat. Need to talk to War Boss Tay and see if he'll let me borrow Lewis for a little bit, just so I can have somebody to talk to while I'm doing it. Okay, so you get the idea. This is what we're doing. All the panel lines. I can't stress enough that it does not matter how neat you are at this stage. Okay, so I'm going to leave off with that. Oh man, my camera skills are pretty bad, but that's not news to anyone who's been watching for a while. So let's move on to the next piece. Get one of these smaller pieces, do the same thing. So should have some music or something playing in the background, so it's not so all you hear is the compressor and the airbrush. I know that's got to be kind of annoying, but sorry about that. And I'm just going to do this this one side, the same side as, or the other side is basically the same thing, so you don't have to worry about seeing the same thing twice. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for this side. You see it looks like a big pile of crap right now. Okay, pushing it this way goes off camera, pulling it back towards me stays in camera. I have to remember that. But that's it. That's all we're doing for appreciating. And as I said before, please, if you're doing this and you're thinking, oh, I've got to stay perfectly in the lines, no, you absolutely do not. And as a matter of fact, the messier you make it, the more character it's going to give it once we start putting the base coat on. So just keep that in mind. If you like to make a mess, this is the perfect job for you and you're going to have a ton of fun. Okay, so I'll do one of the platform edge pieces now. Let me grab my trusty chopper sticker. Stick it on. There we go. Perfect timing, I don't have to talk. Stay in the frame. Do the corners on the top pieces as well. Sorry about the abrupt stop there, I had a little bit of an interruption. But this piece is almost done. Inside the windows, you want to get the corners in there as well. Probably won't be seen as much as the rest of the model, so it's not imperative that you get inside there. And these back pieces won't be seen at all. Stay in the frame. These pieces won't be seen, so you don't have to worry about that either. You get the rivets as well. And that's pretty much all there is to that one. Now for the small frame panels, do the same thing.
And that's all there is to that.
So, oh, wait, one more type. The access panels.
See how nice and neat that is?
Okay, so we're good to go on the pre-shading. We're going to finish up the rest of all the other pieces, and then we'll be back to start the first base coat. Okay, we're done with pre-shading and we're ready to move on to base coating. You'll know you're ready for your base coat when you can look at this and say, I should just sell my airbrush. That's when you know your pre-shading looks exactly the way it should. So everything is done. Make sure that you have everything done before you move on to the next step. Look at everything carefully. Make sure you hit all the areas that you want to pre-shade, because it is a real pain in the butt to have to change colors and go back. So just make sure that you're ready to go, and we'll move on to the next step.